Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodanandana Praja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodanandana Praja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasodanandana Praja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Canto 10, Chapter 77. And there are two texts, text 9 and text 10. Oh, I think it's 9 and 10. Yeah. Vikshatai Kanchanam Svanam Nirupya Pura Rakshanam Shobham Cha Salvarajam Cha Darukam Praha Keshavaha Vikshatat Kadanam Svanam Nirupya Pura Rakshanam Shobham Cha Salvarajam Cha Darukam Praha Keshava Vikshatat Kadanam Svanam Nirupya Pura Rakshanam Shobham Cha Salvarajam Cha Darukam Praha Keshava. Please chant. Vikshatat Kadanam Svanam Nirupya Pura Rakshanam Shobham Cha Salvarajam Cha Darukam Praha Keshava Vikshatat Kadanam Svanam Nirupya Pura Rakshanam Shobham Cha Salvarajam Cha Darukam Praha Keshava. Thank you very much. The word for text 9, Viksha, seeing, tat, that, Kadanam, destruction, Svanam, of his own men, Nirupya, arranging, Pura, of the city, Rakshanam, for protection, Shobham, the vehicle Shobha, Cha, and Salvarajam, the king of the Shalva province, Cha, and Darukam, to Daruka, his chariot driver. Praha, spoke, Keshava, Lord Krishna. And the translation for text 9, this is by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Sukadev Goswami continued, after he arrived at Dwarka, that's Krishna, and saw how his people were threatened with destruction, and also saw Shalva and his Shobha airship, Lord Keshava arranged for the city's defense and then addressed Daruka as follows. So there's a purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Lord Krishna placed Sri Balaram in a strategic position to guard the city, and he also appointed a special guard for Sri Rukmini and the other queens inside the palaces. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, by a secret route, special soldiers conveyed the queens to safety inside Dwarka. And text 10. Ratam prapaya me sutta shalvasya yanikam ashudvai sambrahmastena kartavyo mayavi shobharat ayam. And the translation for text 10. Lord Krishna said, "O driver, quickly take my chariot near Shalva. This Lord of Shobha is a powerful magician. Don't let him bewilder you." Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagan Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamsha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Ramapada Swami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Asadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'll just read the translation of both texts. Sukadeva Goswami continued, after he arrived, meaning Krishna, at Dwarka and saw how his people were threatened with destruction, and also saw Shalva and his Shalva airship, Lord Keshava arranged for the city's defense and then addressed Daruka as follows. In text 10. Lord Krishna said, "O driver, quickly take my chariot near Shalva. This Lord of Shobha is a powerful magician. Don't let him bewilder you." So there's a particular train of thought of Lord Krishna that's given by Sukadeva Goswami, who's doing the narration. And this is the thought that was expressed by Krishna, because we're backtracking just a little bit to understand his thinking before he moves into action. So this was Krishna's thought. Because I have come here with my respected elder brother, King's Partial to Shishupal may well be threatening my capital city. So that was in the 8th text, just prior to what we're reading, Krishna's thinking. So this thought that Krishna had followed on his seeing inauspicious omens once the Rajasuya sacrifice was complete and Shishupal had been killed. And Srila Jiva Goswami, he comments in this way. These are his words. Seeing the bad omens, and the word was kadaman, he, meaning Krishna, returned. That means to Dwarka. Because he was in Indraprastha for the Rajasuya sacrifice. It had ended. He had killed Shishupal. And then some bad omens were visible. So that led to this thought. Oh, actually some friends of Shishupal may well be attacking Dwarka. Uh, so Srila Prabhupada writes in this way, and this is from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Lord Krishna understood that there was great danger in the city of Dwarka, he took permission from the elder members of the Pandava family, especially from his aunt Kunti Devi, and started immediately for Dwarka. So this specific mention of his aunt Kunti Devi, it draws attention to the deference of Lord Krishna to his aunt, because prior to his departure, there's a certain etiquette that had to be attended to. So even though there's this urgency to return to Dwarka, Krishna attends to etiquette. So there's mention that when Queen Kunti, she's also known as Prita, saw her nephew Krishna, the master of the three worlds. This is when Krishna first arrived in Indraprastha for the Rajasuya sacrifice. Her heart became filled with love. And there's this description: rising from her couch with her daughter-in-law, she embraced the Lord. So this aspect of Krishna's relationship is highlighted earlier, because there's mention that Krishna bowed down to his aunt, Kunti, and the wives of the elders. And then it was that Draupadi, Queen Kunti's daughter-in-law, and the Lord's sister Subhadra bowed down to him. So notice the etiquette. So in the same way, at his arrival in Indraprastha, bowing down to his aunt, and at the time of his leaving, again, being very attentive to have her permission to depart for Dwarka. Now that the sacrifice was over. Now Srila Prabhupada continues in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna began to think that while he was staying in Hastinapur with Balaram after the killing of Shishupal, Shishupal's men must have attacked Dwarka. I have come here with Balaram, these are Krishna's words, the most worshipable, and the word that was used for Balaram is Arya Mishra. So that's how Srila Vishwanath, who's always very attuned to the thinking process of the particular great personalities, he's actually understanding what Krishna was thinking. And this is how Srila Vishwanath puts it, that Krishna's thought was, I've come here with Balaram, the most worshipable. Now, there's a very interesting point that's beginning to emerge just in looking at this, and that is that the Lord saying that his devotees, as this thought indicates, that turning towards his devotees to rescue them in their distressed state. So just the fact that Lord Krishna is beginning to think, oh, the city must be in great danger, it's indicating a certain pattern in, you could say, in the way Lord Krishna thinks, and that is that he's always turns his attention to his devotees to rescue them if they're in a distressed state. And there's this fantastic description by the wives of the kings that were imprisoned by Jarasandha, who was also a friend of Shishupal and of Saldha. And this is how the wives of the kings were actually singing about Lord Krishna's noble deeds. They were singing about how he would kill their husband's enemy and deliver their husbands. And they go on where they say, in the same way the gopis would sing his glories, how he killed the enemy of the elephant king Gajendra, the enemy of Sita, daughter of Tanaka, and the enemy of his own parents as well. And the sages, too, who obtained Lord Krishna's shelter would glorify Lord Krishna. So the wives of the kings who had been imprisoned, by King Jarasandha, they were understanding that Krishna's noble deeds, this particular aspect of his noble deeds of always rescuing those that were devoted to him when they're in a distressed state. And so they bring up these various examples of different personalities and different categories of persons that all sing about Krishna's noble deeds. So the Lord saving his devotees is often preceded by his thinking of his devotees. So in the case of the 20,000 kings who had refused to submit absolutely to Jarasandha during his world conquest, had been forcibly imprisoned by him in his fortress named Girivraja. So this was early on in the 10th canto, in the 24th chapter. In the 70th chapter, the 24th verse, where there's that description. So their messenger had brought to Krishna a message from the kings. And this is what the kings say. So I'm looking at how the different personalities are expressing their distress and how Lord Krishna is responding to the distress, or even how he's ahead of time understanding the distress. So their messenger had brought this message from the 20,000 kings who'd been imprisoned by Jarasandha. This was the message from the kings. Krishna, Krishna, O immeasurable soul, destroyer of fear for those surrendered to you. Despite our separatist attitude, we have come to you for shelter out of fear of material existence. So this is how the king's understanding. They're actually in a fearful condition, and they're understanding that he is the personality who can destroy fear. So they're taking shelter of Lord Krishna in this particular entreaty that they make through the message that they send with their messenger. And after further prayers, one of which explains their fear, they then present a prayerful entreaty. So this is their entreaty to Lord Krishna. I'll come to that in a minute. First, I'm going to look at how they express their fear, because that's part of being in a distressed condition. There's a lot of fear. So 20,000 kings, this is how they explain their fear to Lord Krishna. O Lord, with this corpse-like body, always full of fear, we fear the burden of the relative happiness of kings, which is just like a dream. Thus we have rejected the real happiness of the soul, which comes by rendering selfless service to you. Being so very wretched, we simply suffer in this life under the spell of your illusory energy. So it's very clear that these are devotees of Lord Krishna, because it's not just a matter of we're in a fortress imprisoned by Jarasandha, we're in a state of starvation, we're actually distressed because our kingdoms have been left without a ruler. That is not what they're expressing. They're actually understanding on a much more transcendental level, because they're devotees of Lord Krishna, that the body is even like a corpse, is destined to die. But they actually feel that just by having that position of kings, they've actually are experiencing distress because they're forgetting that the real happiness doesn't lie in their having a kingdom to rule, but rather that their happiness lies in rendering selfless service to Lord Krishna. So that's what they're actually seen as their real unhappiness, and they're expressing that. So very extraordinary, expressing their fearful condition on a much broader level. So the kings were themselves seeing themselves as having fallen under the spell of the Lord's illusory energy. So they had, as they were understanding, they had mistaken the tremendous anxiety of political leadership for happiness. And Lord Krishna's response to the messenger is one of allaying the distress of his devotees. So here's one of the examples that was brought up by the wives of these imprisoned kings, and this is examining a little bit more closely how Krishna allays the distress of his devotees. And this is what Krishna says. With pleasing words, the Lord addressed the messenger sent by the kings. My dear messenger, I wish all good fortune to you. I shall arrange for the killing of King Magadha. Do not fear. So you can see the great nobility of Lord Krishna in how he is immediately ready to make some arrangement to free these kings. And he directly says, do not fear. Now, Gajendra, because this is the other example brought up by the wives of these imprisoned kings. Gajendra, the king of the elephants, he understands the following in relation to the Lord delivering one from distress, because that's the topic, looking at what is the understanding of the personality or the personalities that are turning to Lord Krishna to look for some alleviation of their distress. So this is how Gajendra, the king of the elephants, understands something of his particular distress and how it plays itself out in relation to the Supreme Personality of God. And this is what he says. So he's in a very precarious position because he's been fighting for about 1,000 years, and a crocodile has, with his jaw, his particular leg in its grip. And this is his statement. The Supreme Personality of God is certainly not known to everyone, but he is very powerful and influential. Therefore, although the serpent of eternal time, which is fearful in force, endlessly chases everyone, ready to swallow him, if one who fears this serpent seeks shelter of the Lord gives him protection, for even death runs away in fear of the Lord. I therefore surrender unto him, the great and powerful supreme authority, who is the actual shelter of everyone. So, the saving of someone from fear of death by Lord Krishna is explained by Srila Prabhupada, such that death is the representative of Krishna who takes everything away from the living entity who has accepted a material body. So the material body, with everything that gets associated with it, gets simply removed from the living entity at the time of death. And that's the role of death. And Srila Prabhupada, he generalizes, everyone fears death. So we were hearing how the Gajendra was expressing that actually death is pursuing everyone. And he was even referring to death as being like a serpent which is chasing everyone. So, however, there's a particular thing that is different for somebody who seeks shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is that it can be saved from death. So, of course, the question can be raised, does the devotee not die? I mean, does he not die? But the response is that the devotee must certainly give up his body because the body is material. But for one who surrenders to Krishna fully and is protected by Krishna, the present body is his last. That's the significance. He will not again receive a material body. And so he won't be subjected to death. He won't be subjected to what the kings in their brilliance are understanding, that actually the body's like a corpse. It's already destined to die. So it's like a corpse the whole time one is inhabiting it. And as Gajendra puts it, it's like a serpent is chasing one throughout one's life. So that is the particular way in which the fear of death gets allayed for the devotee. He understands that actually this is going to be his last material body. He won't again be subjected to this whole life fearing death. In whichever way he understands death, either it's something that's chasing him or just that the body itself is like a corpse. And Srila Sukadeva Goswami explains how the Lord comes to understand Gajendra's condition, because this is very interesting, because we're looking at how the Lord actually allays this fear of the devotee or comes to the rescue of the devotee in his or her distressed condition. So here's a description from Srila Sukadeva Goswami, how Lord Krishna comes to understand Gajendra's condition, because we've been looking at how Krishna is thinking and coming to understand something. So in the case of Gajendra, when the king of the elephants was describing the supreme authority without mentioning any particular person, he did not invoke the demigods headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and Chandra. Thus, none of them approached him. However, because Lord Hari is the super soul, Purushottama, the personality of Godhead, he appeared before Gajendra. So Gajendra wasn't directly identifying the personality he was appealing to, but we hear the personality of Godhead as the super soul he understood, and he appeared before Gajendra. And the Lord's appearing to Gajendra in his distress is described. And here's the description, because the whole point is the Lord comes to the devotee at his moment of distress. So this is the Lord understanding. After understanding the awkward condition of Gajendra, who had offered his prayers, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who lives everywhere, appeared with the demigods who were offering prayers to him. Carrying his disc and other weapons, he appeared there on the back of his carrier Garuda with great speed according to his desire. So it was a very speedy appearance. So the narration proceeds of the Lord's understanding of the situation and his relieving his devotee in distress. So here's the description. Gajendra had been forcefully captured by the crocodile in the water and was feeling acute pain. But when he saw that Narayan, wielding his disc, was coming in the sky on the back of Garuda, he immediately took a lotus flower in his trunk, and with great difficulty, due to his painful condition, he uttered the following words: "O my Lord Narayan, Master of the universe, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you." So already his heart was in a state of submission to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So at the moment when actually Gajendra actually says, he verbalizes, "I offer my respectful obeisances unto you," even while physically offering a lotus flower. It's very extraordinary. So the Lord's rescue of his devotee in distress is also described. So I'm reading quite a bit because it's just quite beautiful, I think. So seeing Gajendra in such an aggrieved position, the unborn Supreme Personality of Godhead had immediately got down from the back of Garuda by his causeless mercy and pulled the king of elephants along with the crocodile out of the water. So here this battle had been raging between two personalities in different bodies, an elephant and a crocodile, going on for 1,000 years. And Lord Narayan, he's able to pull both of them out of the water. Then in the presence of all the demigods who were looking on, the Lord severed the crocodile's mouth from his body with his disc. In this way, he saved Gajendra, the king of the elephants. So his pain was coming from the mouth of the crocodile being clamped to his leg. So Lord Narayan severs that jaw from the body of the crocodile. So hence he relieves Gajendra from his distress. So the third example given by the wives of the imprisoned kings, those imprisoned by Jarasandha, or rather, I should actually say that I'm switching. I'm going back to the current scenario where Lord Krishna is seeing that Salva's aircraft, and he's seen the decimation of his own forces in Dwarka. So he's directly witnessing the distress, just as Lord Narayan witnessed the scene of Gajendra. Here is what Lord Krishna is witnessing when he comes to Dwarka. So that decimation is described earlier on, how it all came about, this decimation of the forces in Dwarka. Shalva besieged the city with a large army, O best of the Bharatas, decimating the outlying parks and gardens, the mansions along with the observatories, towering gateways and surrounding walls, and also the public recreational areas. So imagine how devastating that is if you're arriving as Krishna, the king of Dwarka. He's actually seen all the parks are destroyed, the mansions with their towers are destroyed, the recreational areas, all destroyed. From his excellent airship, this is going to the description of how Salva was decimating the city. From his excellent airship, meaning Salva, he threw down a torrent of weapons, including stones, tree trunks, thunderbolts, snakes, and hailstones. A fierce whirlwind arose and blanketed all directions with dust. So one can see that it's actually a very frightening condition to be in, were one to have been a resident of Dwarka. And indeed, the effect on the residents was such that the torment of the airship meant that they had no peace. It just was a constant bombardment. I mean, the city where I grew up had regular hailstorms, and they're not like simple hailstorms. The hailstones would be very large, like literally stones, and most of the roofs were, if they weren't thatch, they were corrugated iron. So when these large hailstones hit the roofs, these tin roofs, it's completely frightening. So we're reading this description of Shalva throwing down hailstones, but not only hailstones, there's also thunderbolts and tree trunks. So hailstones are quite loud. I can't imagine if tree trunks are landing on roofs. It's quite something. And thunderbolts, gosh, that, I mean, even when one hears the thunder, it's kind of jarring and rumbling, and there's the anticipation of a storm. So the whole thing is very magnified and dramatic. And then on top of it, he manages to create a dust storm. So certainly no peace. So Krishna, when he's arriving, he's seen the decimation that's been caused by Shalva's actions. And Srila Vishwanath gives the intervention of Lord Krishna, how Lord Krishna again is actually stepping in to relieve the distress. So the first thing is that Krishna appointed a special guard for Rukmini and the other queens inside the palace. So selected generals used a secret route to convey the queens to safety in the inner chambers of the city. So like, one reads that during wartime, there's underground bomb shelters. So the way, you can find some peace from the constant noise of bombs exploding is to go very deep down into the earth where some shelter is present. So in this particular case, Lord Krishna's arranging for special generals to transport the queens to some secret routes to go to the center of the city where there's some sort of inner chamber. So he placed Balaram in a strategic position for the protection of the city. So that's what you do with your most important commander. And Lord Krishna's action then is to his charioteer Dwarka, he tells him the following: do not be alarmed or confused, since Salva uses illusion. So he's preparing his chariot driver for what's to come. He is not referring to King Shalva. He's not by nature a warrior. He was called a controller because of the airship Shobha made of Maya. So there's an interesting distinction that's made by Srila Jiva Goswami in relaying what Krishna's words were to his chariot driver. He's letting his chariot driver know this King Shalva isn't actually a warrior by nature, but he has this ability to control because he has this incredible airship made of illusion. So Lord Krishna supports his charioteer by letting him know that Shalva uses illusion, that he has illusory powers, and he's master of the Shobha vehicle. But as soon as Daruka had his orders, he had Lord Krishna seated on the chariot and he drove very quickly towards Shalva, so no hesitation. So Krishna says this of himself because we've been looking at how Krishna is actually coming to understand different situations of distress of his different devotees, how he's responding to it, how he's ending the distress. And this is what Krishna says of himself in Bhagavad Gita 9:18. I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. That's how Krishna describes himself. And indeed, through these examples, just drawing from those given by the wives of the imprisoned kings, he has shown himself to be the master, the witness, the refuge, and the most dear friend. So Krishna is the ultimate goal or shelter, and therefore one should take shelter of Krishna, either for protection or annihilation of his distress. As Srila Prabhupada writes, no one can be a better friend than Krishna, nor can anyone be a better well-wisher. So ending on that note, that was an examination of these two verses. If there's any comment, thought, query, please go ahead.
Was listening yesterday to a narration from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita of Lord Brahma, who's saying exactly the same thing, that the most attractive and endearing quality of Krishna, the topmost quality of Krishna, is his well-wishing and always thinking on the welfare of his devotees. So it's quite something. It's always thinking like that, and that makes I mean, Lord Brahma, when he came to that realization, he was in tears. I have to hear it again to remember, the circumstances.
Well, thank you for actually bringing up another personality who actually came to this understanding that Lord Krishna is the most dear friend. Yeah, it's very extraordinary. I mean, even in reading or looking at more closely at these different personalities who came to be in a condition of distress and how Krishna deals with the distress, they're very different circumstances. Oh, welcome. Hare Krishna. They're very different circumstances, and he's utilizing different means for protection. So And in most cases, he's actually eliminating the personalities that are enemies to his devotees, like literally eliminating. And the realization on the part of his devotees in all circumstances, like in these examples that were looked at, that were originally quoted by the wives of the imprisoned kings, those kings imprisoned by Jarasandha, the 20,000 kings. There's this common element that the devotees get a deeper understanding that their distress isn't the immediate distress. It's on a much broader level. It's by virtue of the fact that they're inhabiting a material body, or that they've actually got attached to the particular position they hold, such as the kings were viewing themselves. They were seeing it that they were actually at fault for their unhappy state, because they were seeing their political leadership positions as the cause of their happiness, but in fact, the real happiness lay in their connection with their service to Lord Krishna. So a deeper understanding of the relationship with Lord Krishna comes from being in that distressful condition. And on the part of Lord Krishna, his particular intervention is such that he eliminates the immediate gross distress, but it's allowed for such a deepening of the relationship with him at the same time. So, and that deepening of the relationship also in many of these examples has led to a greater reflection on death. So that's the part that's, in one sense, so extraordinary, because by virtue of the fact that there's a habitation of a material body, death is implicit within the body by virtue of inhabiting that body. So the particular distressful condition just highlights the ever-present danger of death. And so those reflections are also, I guess, part of that deepening of the relationship with Lord Krishna, from being in the precarious position, but understanding more deeply that one's position already is highly precarious, even if one were not in very extenuating circumstances. So yes, if you read further on Lord Brahma, that would be very wonderful to hear how he came to understand that particular point of the ongoing relationship with Krishna being such that it is a relationship of great friendship. It's the greatest friend that one can have. And that was the particular, I guess, insight that one can get from even looking at these various examples of personalities in those extenuating circumstances, who did get their further understanding, who did reflect on death, and that greatest understanding that Krishna is one's greatest friend. So, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.